Hey, Fresh Fam! It's Dr. B, and I'm here today with my special guest, Miss Aisha Davis.
Hello.
My state board rep on the State Board of Education here in the great state of Texas. So if you're tuning in from somewhere else and you're not familiar with this face, she is my rep, and so I'm so glad to have her today. If you want to introduce yourself to the people and tell them a little bit about
Thank you. So my name is Aisha Davis. I was a STEM teacher for a little over a decade. I taught physics, chemistry, and engineering. Started going down to Austin advocating for the best needs for students, and wanted to make sure I had a seat at the table so I can be there when those decisions are being made.
Awesome, and she does. Okay, and so well, let's start with a little celebration though before we hop into our conversation for today. So here in the state of Texas, we just recently had a major step forward, I believe,
Yes.
with the passing of the African American Studies course for high school students. So we have an elective now on the books that's all official here in the state of Texas. Tell us a little bit about that.
We do have our second and final reading.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be in April, and that's exciting. It's one more opportunity to introduce any new amendments. So any more ideas on figures that should be included, we have one more opportunity to make sure the course is as good as we can get it. It probably won't be reviewed again for at least another 10 to 20 years. So we want to make sure that they have the best course possible, but that'll be April 17th.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so people that are concerned with like what is in that curriculum, there were people, complaining about textbooks not too long ago in the state like Texas and how those textbooks talked about slavery and enslaved people, I should say. So like if they have some concerns, they can review the actual curriculum.
Yes.
And what those teaks will be.
Yes.
And if they have concerns, they can come and voice those concerns.
Definitely. You have one more chance to testify before us to let us know how you feel about what we have so far. Every single time we've had public testimony, we found something new that we've ended up adding to the course. And I do want to thank you so much for your dynamic testimony.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, that was very influential in our decision to move forward with a lot of different parts of the course. But there's one more chance for that, and that'll be during that April meeting too.
Awesome. All right. So note to self if you're a person interested in that.
Yes.
So for today's Fresh Chat, we're going to dive into a conversation about the Crown Act. So I'm going to give a little bit of background for the sake of time. We don't do these talks for long. Everybody got stuff to do. But for me, so underneath my head wrap, I am locked, right? And so because I'm locked, I feel a particular inclination when I see something with locked kids, but particularly black boys is what's been coming up in the national news. And so first there was this incident that happened in New Jersey, right? And I want to say these students' names on the video. So Andrew Johnson was the student with the wrestling match, and that went viral, right? The student that was forced to cut his locks off before he could compete, even though he was trying to use a cap to cover it and do whatever he could to conform. And I guess he had been allowed to do that previously, clearly.
Yes.
And so then this particular person, this ref, enforced this rule, and he had to cut his locks. And so if you remember that picture, I just remember you could tell the kid was fuming, and it was so humiliating for him to have to sit there and cut his locks off to be able to compete, and he won, of course. And so after that, it was like, that was in New Jersey. That was kind of far away. I'm in Texas, and then here we go again. But in Texas,
Yes.
2 times in Barbers Hill ISD, we have this student who's they tell him he can't walk. He gets suspended, and his cousin gets suspended because their locks are too long.
Yes.
And so they're saying if it's past their ear and touching their shoulder, then their hair is too long for all boys in their school district. And the superintendent has gone on record saying this has been the policy since the beginning of their district 90 years ago. And so to him, he said there's nothing racial about it. This just is what it is. Boys can't have long hair, and that's just the rule, and they're not going to change it, and so he can't walk. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I saw him on the Ellen show, saw that interview with Ellen, and her pleading with the school district, like, this is a good kid, never been in trouble, makes good grades. Like, y'all please let him graduate. And then the creators of Hair Love brought him to the Oscars, and so, like, all these people are showing him love, and meanwhile, I'm sitting here, like, within my own sphere of influence. I'm not Ellen. I can't write him a $20,000 check.
Right.
I can't make it national news. But so now I'm thinking, as a person that sees these stories on Facebook, how do we go from Facebook to actual activism and work towards ensuring that we support and protect our babies in these schools? And so that's why I have my rep here. So call your rep when you see something going on, right? And so that's what I want to talk about. So the Crown Act is one possible solution. If you want to share a little bit about the Crown Act, and then we'll just
definitely.
talk about it.
So the Crown Act protects natural hairstyles with our students. It's been focused on the workplace, but here in Texas, I want to make sure that our students are protected because of their hair. Another story that didn't get as much limelight is of a 6-year-old little boy named Tink in East Texas. And this young man, a sweet little boy, has long hair, and his grandmother went to enroll him and was told that she had 2 options. She could either cut his hair or make him wear a dress every day and identify as a girl. And because the grandmother chose neither one of those options, he was placed into a room by himself for nearly 2 weeks, by himself, a young boy just beginning school.
I just got some kind of chill at the back of my neck, like fighting man.
Definitely. So now we have harm being inflicted to a young child because of his hair, and I guarantee he doesn't understand that. So we have to make sure that our kids are learning and not being distracted by that, but discriminatory policies that can stop them from that. So in DeAndre's case, he did move to another school, but he shouldn't have to. This is a senior year. He should be focused on scholarships, college applications, prom, and everything else. But instead, he has to worry about transferring schools in the middle of his senior year just because of his hair. Crazy. That to me is beyond crazy, and I really want to do something about it. So I'm very proud to work with our Legislative Black Caucus to bring the Crown Act to Texas and protect our children.
I'll drink to that, honey. That is
drink.
Listen, it's so real, and so that's why I want to have this conversation on camera, because sometimes we're having these conversations with each other about, hey, what can I do? What can be done? And I think it's important for people to know, listen, this is how we activate. So I'm glad that you did say his name. DeAndre Arnold and Caden Bradford were the 2 students here in Texas that kind of got a little more national acclaim. And so for me, you talked about policy. In their district, it is the district's policy and has been for 90 years. And to them, they're like, hey, it's not a problem. You just go get a haircut. Like, what are we doing? Like, boys get haircuts and girls can grow their hair as long as they want to.
Right.
So we already have this issue about gender expectations or whatever. That's another conversation we could get into. But when we talk about policies, I want to focus on that conversation. Because policies are supposed to be put into place to protect students and to almost create certain outcomes in our schools. And so if the outcome is to have, protection of the learning environment, and I have distractions and disruptions, what distraction is a student's hair length? Like, it's like if the hair is right here, it's not a distraction. Right. But when it hits your shoulder, like the classroom just go, his hair hit his shoulders, we ain't paying no attention. Like, what are we actually protecting students against or with these policies in the first place?
I first want to address that comment that was made that we've had this policy all of this time, so it must be fine. I was just reading just the other day that lynching has just now been outlawed federally, and it's been wrong for a long, long time. So just because your policy has been in place for years or decades or centuries, that doesn't validate that it's supposed to be there. So that's my response. That's my response to that one. Girl. So no, unless you can specifically, and it's federal rulings that have said if you're not specifically disrupting instruction in any kind of way, then you have protection. DeAndre, that was a part of his culture. He has a background from the Caribbean islands, so his hair means strength, especially here in the Bible Belt of Texas. You would think that hair would be more protected when we reflect on the story of Samson. So I don't understand the justification of consistently putting kids in ISS, denying them things that they've worked so hard for just because of their hair length. I sincerely can't fathom that.
And to say that he makes good grades, and he doesn't get in trouble otherwise. And so to me, then we start to see this weaponizing of black bodies. Where we have somebody say, you can't do this or you can't do that, and police our bodies. And I think to me, it's the deepest right that I have to be left alone.
Right.
Like, it's one thing to say, give us our rights, give us some reparations, give us some whatever you got. And it's another thing to say, just leave me alone and let me be in my natural state as I am. And so I think I'm getting so almost enraged, and I have to channel that into action. Because I think about my own daughter, and what if she looks at my hair and says she wants locks? who's to say what your policy? Granted, she's a girl; she can have her hair as long as she wants.
Right.
Like, who's to say that there won't be a policy that somebody enforces in a school or in a workplace to say what she can or cannot do with her body?
Definitely.
And we have to fight against that.
There's something that everybody can do right now. There's over 1,200 school districts in the state of Texas. Check your board policy to see if they have any discriminatory policies right now. Contact your board members and tell them that you want them changed. Those are elected officials. So if they're not willing to listen to you and change and do what's best for students, then they have to understand its consequences to that. So that's what everybody can do right now. And then in January, when it's time for our next legislative session, make sure you're aware of what's going on with the Crown Act. Sign up to testify when it comes up. Make sure you're contacting your legislators so that they support it, and that they make sure it's moving from the House to the Senate to the governor, because we have to make sure that it actually is enacted into law, and that in itself is a whole nother struggle.
Okay, so having said that, those are ways that we can get active on the state level and then on your local board level as well. Some people don't understand the power of the local board. The local, because some people don't go and vote for school board, and I personally was one of those people until I started working on like my PhD and started to understand. I got a PhD in educational leadership and policy, and it wasn't until then that I'm like, like everybody's always complaining about what Mike Morath did or whoever the commissioner is of education. It's like, hold on, your local board has so much control over what happens with your kid in schools. And so to me, yes, we need to go vote for those officials, but then also understanding those policies and the power that we have to change them. So in this situation, black students are only 3% of the demographic in that school. So clearly, this was a school district in Texas with an all-white board, with a majority white neighborhood community. So these kids' interests are not being protected, and it's almost like they're powerless to do something against it unless you have allies that understand what culture and heritage is. So for me, I have a nephew that's 5 years old now. Locked his hair when he was 3. I sent you the picture. When he was 3, locked his hair because his dad's hair is locked and he wanted locks like his dad, right? And so here there's going to be this pride in this that I can only imagine when he's a senior being told to cut his hair off. So for me, what are we preparing kids for? The workforce? His dad, like I just said, works IT for like a Fortune 500 company, is like big time in his company, and has locks to the middle of his back. It does not prohibit him from doing good work. And so what are we preparing the kid for is what I'm trying to figure out with such a policy.
Dr. Kevin Coakley, who's over African American Studies at the University of Texas at Austin, has been instrumental in helping with the African American Studies course. He has dreads all the way down his back, and one of the most intelligent men that I've ever met. So I don't see how his length of his hair or the style of his hair has hindered him in any way. And I really think we need to see more of that in different ways. So we need to start, looking at different styles, putting more different folks on the forefront, making sure we have people testifying that have different styles of hair. So that's the face that's seen a little bit more. I truly believe we need to advocate for ourselves. We don't need anybody to do that for us, but we do have to have those allies. So those of us who do feel so strongly, we have to continue to educate those who may not know. So I have found sometimes it is ignorance, and not like a malicious ignorance.
No ill intent.
Yeah, no ill intent at all. But when you open up those conversations and you have, meaningful dialogue, you can come to a consensus that, hey, we're not protecting our kids with this type of policy. Let's do something about it. But it does take advocacy in those conversations and open minds.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because some people, they are not ill-intended. And I tell people when we do this work, I'm going in schools and districts across the country, talking to teachers and having conversations about race and culture. And sometimes people have not ever even had to open the door to have those conversations. So we create a safe space to have those conversations. And then we say, like, listen, it's okay that you haven't had to consider this. Like, your natural hair is a standard of beauty, this Eurocentric, standard of beauty that is accepted. So you haven't even had to wrestle with this idea. But me as a black woman, I've had to wrestle with this idea of the social conformity
Yes.
my whole
Yes.
life. So like if I go for a job interview, like I'm gonna straighten my,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
before I was locked, you know, you're gonna
Right.
straighten your hair right before the job interview.
Right.
Like there are some things that we've had to grapple with as people of color in this country forever, especially black people with coily, kinky,
Right.
tightly curled hair. We're
Yes.
told that it's not beautiful.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if it's too tight or too, like somebody told me my daughter's gonna have good hair. And it was a family member. She was well intended. And so I have to, you know, from another generation.
Right.
I always keep in mind people are well intended. And I say, well, yeah, you know, but hair doesn't have a behavior. So,
Right.
you know, it cannot be good or bad.
Right.
But for us, it's just this idea of, for me, the more I accept myself and put myself out here, when I go to testify, my locks will be out for
Yes.
sure with intention.
Yes.
My hair is always professional.
Yes.
And so we define what that is. And it doesn't mean that we have to not be ourselves in order to be, you know what I mean? The two are mutually exclusive. So, anywho, that's my rant. But, all right, so let's talk about, so we already covered the policy on the local level, on the state level, what people can do. And so, like I said, I'm always thinking about what are we preparing our kids for, and if it's to help them understand what professionalism is, grooming. I think is like totally okay to talk about grooming
Yes.
if you have locks.
Yes.
And some other conversations. But so moving forward, if people want to keep up with you, support you, know what you have going on, where can they find you?
So you can always shoot me emails. My email is my first name, aicha4education@gmail.com.
Okay.
I also have a Facebook page, Aisha for Education, where I try to update everybody on what's going on with the board, with different education issues around the country, or by you.
Yes, and you can go to the Fresh Classroom for upcoming workshops and booking for on-campus professional development. We talk about race, we talk about culture, we facilitate the kind of conversations that are necessary for us to move the needle forward. And more than that, we take activism off of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and up in these streets.
Yes.
Okay? So that's what we want to encourage you to do, especially our millennials. Like, let's just get real.
Yeah.
Like, with our millennials, like, we are quick to retweet or reshare
Yes.
something on Facebook, and like this outrage culture is like, oh my
Right.
God, y'all see what's
Right.
going on, and then
Right.
next week everybody's going on about
Something
their business.
else. Yes.
But this kid still is not about to graduate.
Right.
So like
Right.
for me, I was like, I went to the website, y'all. I went and looked up when they have a board meeting, and I was like, I'm gonna drive down there and go to this board meeting. And then I have to bring myself back in and
Yeah.
say, now how do we organize
Yes.
in a way that is effective
Yes.
so that we can actually be about the business of making meaningful change to protect more kids and not just going down like, who can I fight? Because that's not
Right.
how we get things done.
Right.
So organizing is important. So when the Crown Act, and let me say this, I forgot to say it at the beginning, CROWN stands for Creating a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair. So we know that it's already been passed in California, New York, and New Jersey, and that Senator Cory Booker and Congressman Cedric Richmond have already introduced the CROWN Act of 2019 in both chambers of Congress. So we shall see on the national level what will happen with this legislation. In the meantime, we can't wait, and so we hope that you get plugged in, that you get connected, share this video, comment, and tell us what you think, what you're going to do, how you're going to get involved with this movement. And thank you so much for not only watching, but for being an advocate for doing what's good for kids, y'all. Until next time, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Fresh Chats with Dr. B is brought to you by thefreshclassroom.com. Are you ready to get fresh? If so, head to our website.